My name is Andy Campbell. I will be hosting today, and I should tell you our session is being recorded. So for those who unfortunately can't make it live, we'll have a wonderful recording as well. So looking forward to having our conversation today. Like I said, a few people still joining, so I'll stall here for just a moment to get us started. I'll ask that if you haven't yet responded to the poll that's on screen, we'd love to have you share with us how you heard about today's session so that we find out more information about the best ways to reach out to the audience in the future. And that helps us to find ways to reach you for further events as we have them in the coming months and years ahead. So appreciate everyone's response there. Just a few reminders, logistics before we get started. We're in our webinar format, so that means that you as participants can't speak or be seen, but we do see you, and we invite you to chat with us through the chat. You can do that finding the chat functionality. You can chat with all the panelists. If you'd like to, you can send chats to individuals if needed, and you can also use the Q&A, which during our session today, we will invite opportunities for you out there to ask questions of our panelists. And so please do use the Q&A or the chat, and I will be monitoring that as we go. So we will get started here, and I'll just level set a few things so we're on the same page about what we're doing here together. If you don't mind, Jill, let's take that poll off screen. So thank you. And I should acknowledge the wonderful Jill Bennett here helping us behind the scenes. So you may see her name, but not her face. But she's here, and thank you, Jill, for all of your help making sure that this all runs smoothly. If you hear her say anything today, it might be her reminding me of something I was supposed to do and forgot because I got so excited about what's happening. So anyway, again, my name is Andy Campbell. I'm Chief Growth Officer for WellSpark Health, and pleasure to be facilitating this conversation today. If you didn't know, this is the third of 3 webinars in a series that we did. So this is the third of 3. And in the first, I was on the other side representing Labs Parking as the head of people and culture, talking about the implementation of the work with WellSpark Health and the partnership, some early results between LAS and WellSpark and the work we were doing there. And I know there's plenty of people from LAS on this webinar, so nice to see so many familiar names showing up and supporting the conversation today. In our second webinar, which happened in April, we heard from one of our wonderful clients, Sandra with Creative Dining Services, and she was sharing her perspective about what WellSpark is doing in partnership with creative dining employees to support their experiences with chronic disease. And during that same conversation, we heard from Bert Wachelhausen, who's the president of WellSpark, and our chief medical officer, Dr. Wayne Rollins, who shared their perspective about the impact of chronic disease distress on today's workforce. But today we have something special to round it out. And again, this is the third of 3, and there are some of you out there who were with us in April and in May for those webinars. So wanted to acknowledge and appreciate you for coming back for the third. We have a special conversation today where we are going to have a chance to hear from participants, employees within the client groups we support at WellSpark, as well as 2 of our coaches who are going to be sharing their experiences. But I would be remiss if I didn't take a few minutes to just share a little bit of context. And I promise this will just be a few minutes, but to get everybody level set and in the same place about who is WellSpark and what we do. So as a former HR leader, I'll share that I believe personally, and I know that this is WellSpark's belief as well, that the world of employee benefits, particularly benefits and wellness, is fragmented, and that there are so many point solutions and wellness point solutions that are wonderful out there, but very few solutions out there that really think about total person health, or at WellSpark, what we call life dimensional health. As you can see, though, from the graphic on the screen, a very small percentage of well-being comes from healthcare, and the majority, over 80%, coming from lifestyle factors and physical environment and socioeconomic factors. And this is why we believe it's time for disruption, and why at WellSpark we speak so passionately about the idea of the life dimensional approach. If you didn't know, WellSpark is part of a good family of companies. Emblem Health, Connecticut, Advantage Care Physicians of New York are all part of the Emblem Health family, where WellSpark is a part of as well, which means we know sick care And at WellSpark, it's our intent to help people before they get into the sick care system through a variety of different solutions, which you'll hear about some today. Our diabetes prevention program is approved CDC curriculum, the T2 curriculum, and you'll hear about diabetes prevention a little bit today from Nicole and from Gamal and their experience. It's been recognized nationally, above average results over traditional CDC programs. The point is we're part of a good family of companies. We're committed to helping individuals achieving a better well-being, and at WellSpark, we say a more enduring well. So we have power in a life dimensional approach. And this is what I believe personally, and I jumped ship from a successful career in HR to go work with WellSpark because I believe in this, and I've seen this happening in so many ways with the employees at LAS who I was supporting, who Kathy Carney, who we'll hear from today, was working with. But there's a lot of solutions providers out there, but not a lot who are looking at total person health or life dimensional health. But we say biopsychosocial or biological, psychological, and social factors. And all of our nurses and coaches like Kathy and like Nicole, who you're going to hear from today, are skilled at uncovering the barriers across this biopsychosocial model that prevent employees from making lasting change. And you're going to get a chance to hear a little bit about how biopsychosocial or the life dimensional approach shows up in everything we do. We're also today going to talk about cultural relevance and cultural competency. And I wanted to share a little up front about what that means so that we're all on the same page and what it means specifically to WellSpark. What we know is that well-being is not a one size fits all. Every solution, every industry, every organization, every individual has a unique set of needs. And so we apply that life dimensional or the biopsychosocial model in a customized way that helps to make sense of what we're doing for the people that we're supporting in order for them to make lasting change, like you'll hear from Morgan and like you'll hear from Gamal today. So our goal is to reach that hard to reach populations, help all individuals not fall through the cracks, and ensure that we're helping as many employees as we can in a way that feels relevant to them. So what does that really look like? Well, here's an example. We hear a lot, I'm sure publicly you've heard this, it's printed in many different ways and places that, what the healthy plate looks like. But what if you're an employee or there's employees out there, you're an employer supporting employees, or you're a broker supporting employers who are supporting employees who eat out of a bowl? And then what? And so coaches like Kathy and like Nicole are leveraging very culturally relevant, customized experiences, resources, tools, and education in order to help move people in an individualized way. But it doesn't stop there. And I think that's important to also share, that it doesn't just stop at the individual level, and that, industry and type of employee matters too. And so as an example, at WellSpark, we support truck drivers out around the country. And so you can imagine suggesting that a truck driver stop in a Trader Joe's or Whole Foods parking lot in order to get some organic lettuce is sort of unrealistic. And in fact, really unrealistic, because if you've ever been to a Trader Joe's parking lot, I don't know about you, but I've never been able to see a big rig fit there. In any case, you get where I'm going. It's sort of unrealistic to think that when you add especially the psychological and social impact of drivers being out on the road without access to gyms and without access to kitchens, we just can't apply the same set of tools and resources to the employees who are driving trucks, the same as the employees who are parking cars, the same as the employees who are sitting in an office. I think you get the gist. The point is, cultural relevance is important to us at WellSpark. It's important to us as we support our employers and our employees. And it's a big part of the way that we show up differently and help individuals make lasting change. So lastly, you'll hear today from Morgan and from Kathy, who are going to talk a little bit about their experiences through the Health Coaching for Life program. And you'll hear from Gamal and from Nicole today, who are going to talk about their experiences around diabetes prevention. These two programs, along with our other two programs around worksite wellness and Help 364, part of our chronic disease management programs, they all have one thing in common: the life dimensional approach, the idea that the biopsychosocial model applies within everything we do. That's the key to remember, and that's what makes us different at WellSpark. So with that, I'm sure that you are so inspired, but if you aren't quite inspired yet, you will be as we move on here. So I have the pleasure of introducing our panel and leading us through a wonderful discussion today. I'll be mindful of time. I'll encourage you to ask questions throughout, and I look forward to having a wonderful discussion with these amazing people. So let me tell you a little bit about them. We have Nicole with us today. Nicole is a senior health coach educator with WellSpark. Lots and lots of experience and educational background, including dietetics with a master's in health education, promotion. She's a certified personal trainer. The list goes on. I can assure you, Nicole is not only a skilled and educated coach, she's also compassionate and passionate and compassionate. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Nicole about her experience supporting Gamal Tab, who is with us today. He is an employee with the CT Transit, Connecticut Transit, who is eligible for participation in the diabetes prevention program that WellSpark is using to support the employees at CT Transit, and looking forward to hearing his experiences. We have Kathy Carney with us, who's a national board certified wellness coach, and she's humble, but I know that there's not very many people out there who are nationally certified on the board. So national board certified wellness coaches, they're in the hundreds and not the thousands across the US. And so it's an amazing set of skills education, and has been coaching for 7 years already, with quite a bit of experience behind her in employees and employee relations and human resources. And we have Morgan Van Loo with us, who is the National Director of Hospitality for Laz Parking, more than 20 years in a variety of hospitality roles, including starting in the restaurant industry. So we have some wonderful people with us today, and I'm going to take us off slideshow so that you can actually see their faces in full screen, which is where we'll spend the rest of our time. And as I mentioned, we also have Jill with us. Jill's behind the scenes helping us as we work through our conversation today. So I'm going to jump right in, and I'll encourage you to ask questions throughout. You can do that using the Q&A or using the chat. I'll pause and make sure I get your questions answered as we go. And feel free to send any messages if things are resonating, if there's something you want to hear more about, and I would love to encourage that dialogue. And I know the group is excited to hear not only the questions I have for them, but also the questions you have for them as well. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to start with Nicole, actually, and just level setting for everyone's benefit. Nicole, why don't you explain your role, like you're a health coach educator, and also what employers and types of employees do you support?
Sure. Thank you, Andy. So the main function, I would say, of a health coach or a health coach educator would be to encourage clients to live a healthier lifestyle. I would say one of the main characteristics of a health coach is you have to have that passion for helping others in order to push them to become their best selves. I really like and enjoy to empower individuals to kind of motivate themselves, right? Inspire them, guide them where they want to go. So as you mentioned, I mainly focus on the diabetes prevention program. So I am a health coach educator and master trainer for that. So I do educational classes. So I do them in group settings, working with participants, but then I also do one-to-one. So if a participant would like to, have a little bit more focus on them, I'll schedule one with them, and I could work with them one-on-one as well as doing the group sessions. So I have the pleasure, I should say, of doing both group and in person. So here at WellSpark, I personally, I've supported a lot of different employers, mainly in the transportation industry, like CT Transit, along with other employers. But that doesn't just mean, they can mean they're on the road. It can mean they're in mechanics, in the office, anywhere in between. Those are the main people that I deal with for the diabetes prevention program.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And similarly for you, Kathy, maybe you could just share a little bit about your role and how it might be different from the role that Nicole just described for herself.
Sure. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it. So I currently support one commercial client, that's Laz Parking, and they're over 1,400 members, give or take. And my role is primarily one-to-one coaching with members who either voluntarily reach out and or may be required to complete some sessions with me based on a chronic condition diagnosis. So the chronic condition coaching requirement is actually something that's unique to Laz and that they've built into their medical and wellness requirements, which is a really great a great thing. So in one-to-one, I mean, similar to what, Nicole said, my coaching really focuses on each individual, what they want to achieve. It's a personal approach. Each client decides their path, the pace they want to take, the goals they want to set. And my job is to help get them there, helping them become more aware of roadblocks or triggers or whatever boundaries may be getting in the way, of them finding their success. So, and then we create steps and goals to really break through those barriers and find some success. So
that's great. So I think you did a good job of describing not only what you do personally, but really what the Health Coaching for Life program is about. Is there anything you want to add just in general about the program or anything you would want to add there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, coaching for life, as you said in the introduction, really is a whole person, a whole life approach. And it's more than just pounds on the scale or dealing with just a chronic condition. As you said, wellness is not one dimensional. It's not just about 10,000 steps a day and 100 ounces of water, right? It's when a member takes part in this program, we look at all aspects of their well-being and ideally addressing more than just what they might be eating, but psychological issues or barriers that may be getting in their way, or kind of support system that they have at home, et cetera. So no two people have the same starting point. We use the term meet the client where they're at, and it's one size does not fit all approach. So Coaching for Life really embraces that.
Love it. Okay, so Nicole, before we get into hearing a little bit about Gamal's experience and Morgan's, just to level set for everyone in your words, could you just describe for us, the diabetes prevention program, or sometimes we refer to it as DPP. So in case that slips out today, I wanted the audience to know that from either Gamal, Nicole, or me, if we accidentally say DPP, why don't you tell everybody what the diabetes prevention program is?
Sure, yeah, and thank you for saying DPP, because that was going to be something I was going to try to remind myself to let everyone know if that does come out of my mouth. So the Diabetes Prevention Program, it's a program run by the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC. They create the educational materials that we provide and we give in our classes. So it is a year-long program. We focus on creating and maintaining behavioral lifestyle changes. I cover topics in the program from healthy eating, stress, sleep, physical activity, amongst others. And what I do is I've coached both in person and digital. So that's a really good aspect of the program, that you can do it in both realms. And we just help participants who are at risk. So everyone who's in the program is at risk for getting diabetes. So we help them to lower their risk and create lifelong changes. And the sessions, like I said, it's a year. So we're with them throughout the whole year to help participants make those changes. And as Kathy mentioned, we meet participants where they are. So the education material is written for us, but we can, meet every participant where they are to create their unique story.
Awesome. And I just want to acknowledge, I saw already a question come in, which is wonderful. Just, keep sending them. And I wanted to acknowledge that I saw one come in, and we'll get to it in the next, obviously, half an hour while we're together. So awesome. Thank you, Nicole, for explaining that. And Morgan, let's go to you and start digging in a little bit to the story. And first, let's just start about, what inspired you in the first place to reach out and work with Kathy when you learned that service or program was accessible or available to LAS employees?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I would say, for my part, I'd been seeing notifications, emails come through internally in our company about the program. And my experience was that, I felt like I was being successful from an output standpoint in the workplace. The product was good. I have been fortunate enough to grow and progress in my career. But privately, the reality is that I spent a lot of time very stressed, very anxious, exhausted, maybe depending on what was going on. And I also knew that I wanted to keep growing professionally. So I was sort of, observing those two things and saying, like, how's this going to work exactly, right? So regarding the coaching, I can't say I knew what to expect exactly when I reached out, but I knew I didn't have the answers. And so it felt like something worth looking into.
Well, suffice it to say, you probably wouldn't be here if you didn't have some results, right? Or at least some positive life changes as a result of working with Kathy. So maybe share a few things that have occurred for you as a result of your work together. And let's start there. How has it impacted not only work, but outside of work too?
Yeah. You know, Kathy and I, we meet, at one point it was weekly, we've moved to bi-weekly as we've been doing it for a bit. You know, we cover a lot of things I think you would expect, like diet and health supplements and things like that. We also cover a lot of things I didn't expect. And I think a big thing that I've learned from Kathy, and you guys were just talking about this, is how interconnected everything is. And with that in mind, probably the single biggest focus and improvement for me has been presence, my presence, or the act of being present, and the realization of how that literally impacts everything. And through that kind of mindfulness, that awareness, I was able to realize that a lot of the challenges I was experiencing, both in work and outside of work, were related to me not being as present and maybe going a little too fast or missing details. So Kathy will regularly push me to identify how I'm feeling, and then push me to identify why I'm feeling that way. And through that process, I still have stress, I still have anxiety. It is way more manageable. Both my wife and I went from substantial sleep challenges to really few and far between these days. And I would just, you know, to bundle it together, I would say I'm just generally more aware of what factors will set me up for success. And I'm present enough to plan for and prioritize those factors.
That's awesome. And I heard you say your wife, so that means you must be giving her little nuggets after your sessions with Kathy. Is that right?
Reverberating effects on both my wife and daughter, I would say.
Yeah, I'm sure that brings every coach in the world a lot of joy, and particularly Kathy, since she's getting to hear it firsthand. That's awesome. We'll come back to you, Morgan. So I'm going to go to Gamal next. So Gamal, you've been working with Nicole for quite a while, obviously with the DPP program. So maybe let's start where we started with Morgan, and tell us what inspired you in terms of starting your time with Nicole.
Yes, well, unlike Morgan, I was new to the company, so I didn't get the emails. I really didn't know about the diabetes prevention program. But one day, someone from HR came walking through the office looking for people that were interested in joining the program. It seems that the first meeting was about to begin, and maybe she didn't get enough responses from interested parties. So she was looking to see whoever she could grab to put into the meeting class. So I volunteered. I didn't know what it was about, but I really needed to be there. So thank God I was offered the opportunity to join the program. And it was a great decision for me. And that's how it happened. That's how I learned about the class.
That's great. And I'm sure that just, it's a wonderful story, and also the cringing of HR people everywhere, right? Having been in that seat before, like, oh boy, we better figure this out quickly. But you know what? It's universal intervention, as you said, and an opportunity for you to be obviously here on the other side of it. So you wouldn't be in this conversation if you didn't have positive results. So I appreciate obviously the authenticity, and honestly, so many people out there in some of the employer groups or brokers who are online listening to this are probably have had that experience themselves. So completely relatable. But you've had some positive changes, obviously, as a result of the program. And so maybe you could share from your perspective, similar to what Morgan said, what are some of those changes, and how has this program impacted you, work, life, and everywhere in between?
Yes, the biggest impact has been my general outlook on losing weight, and I needed to lose weight. My doctor told me that I needed to lose weight, and it was always something that was like in one ear and out of the other ear. And joining this group was something new to me. I'm a loner. I'm a computer programmer. I like to sit alone. I'm on the computer, I'm programming. I don't want to be disturbed. But joining this group, I saw what other people were going through. And the group was a total mixed bag. There were people who had more challenges than I had. We've had somebody who was handicapped in our group. So imagine exercising and maybe shopping and getting the right meals together. So that was probably a greater challenge for him. So I'm like, hey, I had him in my class, I had other people who were much more overweight than I was. I had some people who maybe were less overweight than I was. And I'm like, you know what, I can do this. So we would speak each week, and I would hear so many different challenges. People had responsibilities, they had children, they had to work late. And I said, you know what, I'm not as bad as the worst, I'm not as good as the best, but I can do this. So I started to work harder. I was encouraged by Nicole. She was a great coach. And any challenge that I brought up, that I threw at her, she came up with a great response. She said, hey, here's how we can do this. And she gave me different choices of changing my diet. She told me how to exercise. We visited the gym together as a group, and she told us how to use each machine. So I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the group. I probably would have started one day and stopped the next week, but it was life-changing. So I'm really glad that I did it.
We can thank that HR leader who didn't have enough people in her group.
Yes.
You know, every time I hear these stories, and for years, Kathy and I have had the chance to work together, and I always get emotional when I hear stories like Gamal's and Morgan's, and I know there are hundreds, thousands of others that WellSpark employees, you know, our nurses and our coaches are supporting, but I can't help but get emotional when I hear it, because like, this is amazing. Like, this is really amazing stuff. I'm not sure if it's resonating for the folks listening, but if it is, feel free to send a chat. Tell us how you're feeling. See, my eyes are watering. I'd like to say it's allergies, but just more like you guys are moving me to tears. Kathy, how does it feel for you when you hear Morgan share his experiences?
Besides the goosebumps and feeling a little teary, I feel like kind of like a proud parent. It's like, it's so good to know that the work we're doing together is making a difference for him in his life. Especially because it was stress and anxiety and overwhelm, and things that are so kind of intangible. Like, it's hard to put your hands on that and work through it. So I just, it's feels really good. I'm really happy for him. And he's right. Everything is interconnected. It's all connected.
Life dimensional.
Dimensional. Yes.
Absolutely. Nicole, how about you? I mean, obviously hearing Gamal share his experience with how much you've changed his life, what shows up for you?
I mean, I feel the same way as Kathy said. Just first goosebumps come because you hear firsthand from people how you're impacting them. But I went into this profession to help people, and I always said, if I can help one person, like, everything was worth it. So the fact that I was able to help Gamal and still help in all these changes he's continuing to keep up with, it just makes everything worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nicole, we'll stay with you for a moment, if you don't mind. Obviously, you work with people from, all of us at WellSpark work with people from different cultures, all of us everywhere, I should say, not even at WellSpark, different cultures, different backgrounds, different, experiences, different companies in some case. How do you shift your approach to make sure that what you're providing in terms of support, especially in this group environment that Gamal was talking about, is culturally relevant, both obviously culturally individualized, but also culturally for the type of work or the organization?
Right. Yeah. As Gamal said, our group class that we had was very mixed. So different cultures, different backgrounds, everyone had different experiences. And it was good to hear everyone's voice. I want to always make sure everyone is feeling heard, is one thing. And then a second is that some people in the class, I encouraged to help each other out. So that was one way of doing things. So, if people had different backgrounds, different culture, and the same culture or something like that, I would encourage them to join together, because, after the 12 months, like, sure, they can always reach out to me as a resource, but they would have each other. So I was trying to build that foundation between participants first. The second way that I personally like to do it as a coach is usually in the one-to-ones. It could be in a group if a lot of people, have the same similar culture or background, but I do things on the back end, is what I like to say. So if participants are, for example, different cultures, they have their favorite meals, their favorite foods, different restaurants. I've created handouts specifically for certain cultures based on their favorite meals, keeping the basis of what it is. But my inner foodie nerd in me likes to redo recipes. And so I would redo recipes for individuals, or ask people to give me their menus. I would tell them, give me a menu. Where do you like to go? I'd highlight, healthy options, what you can ask to swap out, and give it back to them to make sure that I was, as Kathy said, meeting people where they're at.
Yeah, that's great. I was on a call recently and somebody was talking about scalloped turnips. And I was like, instead of potatoes. And I was thinking, okay,
Yeah.
okay, that might be a little bit of could be an example of something that maybe Nicole came up with, right?
Right.
Love
Some
it.
people, they're a little hesitant at first. You think like, what are you telling me? Which I'm sure Gamal has thought a couple times when I was talking to him. But I always tell people, trust me, try something once and then come back to me. If you don't like it, we'll brainstorm again.
Yeah. Morgan, I know, going off script, Morgan and I had a conversation back when you were talking about how Kathy supported you through the holiday foods. And I think you had a similar experience. So Kath, I'll ask you, and then certainly Morgan, feel free to chime in. But same question for you. Now you're supporting people at LAS, and I know obviously that LAS culturally has a lot of different flavors and varieties. We'll use those words to describe it. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely every client's perspective is, their reality, and really understanding them, and specifically culturally, has a huge influence over their choices they've made in the past. Like, healthy looks different for everyone, and your culture has a huge influence over that. So, understanding where, again, their starting point, meeting them where they're at. What does that look like? What does healthy look like to you? And working, from there to either, provide resources or tools or recipes that, work into that, or perhaps, that definition needs a little tweaking. So, but understanding where they're starting from is really the key, and decide, where do they want to be, where are they trying to go, and helping them get there. I like to say coaching isn't telling. So my job is not to tell you what to do and hand you a book of recipes and say, here you go. It's to, really even talk through some recipes, and what does it look like? What is, I don't eat this food. Well, what can we put in there to substitute it, et cetera, kind of like Nicole was saying. So you meet them where they're at and what works for them in that moment. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I don't know, Morgan, if you want to tell them what you ate for Thanksgiving. Was it Christmas or Thanksgiving? I can't remember, but I know we had this dialogue and you were like, why am I even making this? I don't even want it anymore.
It was Christmas because I did Thanksgiving in the traditional sense. And afterwards it was like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. But a healthier version of the traditional menu is what I would say.
There you go.
Yeah.
But you didn't go so far as scalloped turnips?
I did not have scalloped turnips.
I love it. So, speaking of just relevance culturally, obviously, Kathy, you came from LAS before you were at WellSpark, so you had a good flavor for what it felt like to the company culture felt like, not necessarily individual cultural relevance. So I guess, tell us how you leverage what you know about LAS, and so that if other employers are listening to this conversation, they can get an understanding for how does a coach really understand culture and then apply what you're doing to make it fit for either cultural within an organization or even industry. Maybe you could speak to that perspective.
Sure. I mean, I think the most important aspect of LAS's culture, I mean, besides their people first culture, related to wellness, is that there is 100% support from the top and from the leadership there. And so I can say to a prospective client or current client, you're engaging in health and wellness in the workplace is highly encouraged and supported. And I'm here because LAS wants to, believes in your health and that your health matters. So when employees, I think, hear this and know that they're supported, it's a game changer for them. And they're much more inclined to engage, but they're also more inclined to talk about it and share their successes with others in the workplace. So, it has a really nice sort of trickle effect. So there's no question that obviously supportive culture, but a health and wellness supported culture is super relevant in someone's ability to be successful. And obviously support is one of our, pillars of the biopsychosocial model. So what a better place than your employer where you spend all your time, maybe not these days, but
we'll say virtually speaking.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome, Kath. Thank you. And I have actually had a couple of good questions come in. I think I'll pivot to one more question and then I'll pause and take some of the ones that came from the audience. But a good time for me to remind you, if you have a question or something that would be interesting for you to know or hear more about, send it over here in the Q&A. And I see a few people sending chats too, and lovely to hear. This is inspiring maybe some folks to take action for some of the employers where these programs are already available, which is great. So I'll go to you, Morgan, next. And likely our audience out there, in addition to people from your colleagues from LAS and from CT Transit or other folks who already have these programs, there's some people out there who either thinking about companies that are thinking about implementing programs like this, or brokers supporting companies who are thinking about implementing programs like this one. And I'd be curious, what you would tell one of those employers about from the employee perspective about the value of this as it relates to your employer relationship with the relationship between employee and employer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good question. I guess I would say, like, I'm in operations, and almost everything in the operations world is ROI focused, or return on investment, right? And what I would guess is challenging about doing that on an ROI assessment of wellness coaching is it's probably pretty easy to define the cost, but I assume it's pretty challenging to define the return. All I can offer on that front is, within the context of my own experience, that return has been massive. And I think those working close to me would confirm that. I'm happier, I'm more present, I'm less stressed, I'm more productive. I don't know how you put a specific value on that, but every one of those things is valuable in my company, no question.
We'd call that priceless, right? There are plenty of ways that we can demonstrate ROI, and there are plenty of ways we can't. And what you just described for me is priceless. So thank you, Morgan. Kamal, I'd give you the same question. How would you describe this for maybe employers who are considering bringing this in? How does this contribute to the company's overall success when these programs exist?
I think it's invaluable. Just generally speaking, a healthy worker, I would think, has more energy, clearer thoughts, feels more confident, can work better, stronger. For me, I was new when I came across the program, so it was an icebreaker. I didn't know many people except for the people who sat on the right and the left of me, and I actually got to know a couple of people that I worked with that didn't sit too far away. So it was a big icebreaker. I got to know their names. I got to know them. Also, our company had a gym on site, and I've never been to the gym before DPP or Diabetes Prevention Program, but afterwards, yes, I was a regular member of the gym, and I saw a lot of other people from the class there, and it was great. And I can't imagine thinking poorly of a company who offers such a program. And basically, you kind of feel great coming to work knowing that your company cares enough to offer such a program. I've worked at some places where they wouldn't think of offering such a program, and you feel that as you go to work each day. So this was definitely a pleasure.
It's wonderful. And what a great way to get to know colleagues when you're brand new. Timing, yes. Amazing. So, one more question for the two of you before I go to the questions that came through. there's probably individuals in the audience today who maybe work for employers like yours, either of yours, who have considered working with a coach or getting involved or raising their hand to participate and haven't taken action. And I would be curious to hear what you would tell them. What advice would you give? Morgan, let's start with you.
Yeah, super relatable because I was there, right? I think pre-coaching, my thought process was something along the lines of, I'm already at capacity, so I can't possibly take anything else on, just logically, right? Which would include, say, coaching. And then usually that thought was followed by something to the effect of, I'll reassess this when I catch up, as if that's a real thing that will ever happen, right? And it was sort of like, I think, my way of justifying, like, not looking into it. At this point, recognizing again how interconnected everything is, making time for certain things, while it feels like an investment up front, I think in a lot of cases will free up time in the long run. So a simple example is just, if I'm exercising every day, I'm going to sleep better. I'm going to wake up feeling better. I'm going to be more focused. I'm going to be more efficient and effective at my job, which is going to let me get out of work, at a more reasonable hour and spend time with my daughter, right? So it's like taking your car in for maintenance, kind of, when you're in a rush, you just want to keep your foot on the gas the whole time, which is sometimes how it always feels. But you can't drive forever without filling the tank, changing the tires. And if you don't do those things, at some point, that car becomes more of a problem than it is a solution or helpful.
Great. And I may steal your car analogy because that was wonderful. Like taking a car in for maintenance. I love it. Gamal, same question to you. If there's anyone out there who's considering or is on the fence and has these programs available, anything you would tell them?
Yes, definitely. If you're in a situation where you need to lose weight or would like to lose weight, I really think that joining a group is the best thing you can do, because of all the things to do alone, losing weight is probably the hardest thing that I've experienced to do it alone, because I didn't do it. Until I joined this program, I didn't have that consistent encouragement to actually do the things that I need to do to lose the weight. And a coach, and definitely a coach like Nicole, what an asset. So you have someone to ask questions. You have somebody to work out with if you need to work out with it. You just have stories of other people whose stories may be similar to yours, where, you know what, you say, well, I can't use that as an excuse, or because of that, I'm going to do better, or I'm going to make a better attempt at losing weight. I would definitely join the program just to see what it's about. And I think that you'll like it.
It's awesome. Thank you, Gamal. So I'm going to go to questions from the audience here before we wrap up. And I had some good ones come through. First, to the coaches, it feels like the advice about what to eat, what to drink, what to do these days is always changing. So how do you, as health coaches, keep up with and decipher what advice to follow? Either of you want to volunteer?
Good question.
You want to try? You want to attempt that one, Kath?
Sure. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. There's so much information, so many fad diets and whatnot. And, part of our education and background is really diving into a lot of these things and what's real food and what isn't real food. And I mean, I come from a mindset that, real food is whole food. It comes from an unaltered place. And, part of what we do is education and educating our clients on what does processed food look like, how to read a label, a lot of things around that. So a big part of our job is education. So I think we start with that. What do they know? What do they not know? Ketchup is not a vegetable, so kind of thing. But so yeah, I hope that answers. I don't know if maybe Nicole has an answer there too. But
anything you would want to add, Nicole?
I agree with Kathy. I think really finding the baseline of what people and where they're getting their knowledge from. So I always find out okay, you heard this, but from where, from who, and teach participants to do that same down the line so that they understand the recognized actual information versus where you heard it from your aunt at Thanksgiving, like something like that.
Yeah, unless the aunt is credible, right?
Right, unless your aunt is credible, then.
Yeah, there
good.
you go. So another question to the two of you, which I think is an interesting one. Have you ever had a client you're working with and you realized you couldn't help? And what do you do? I don't know, Nicole, if you want to take that one.
I'll take that. I'll take a first crack at it. So for me, I don't think I've ever come across someone I couldn't help. I might have needed help within. So another one of the diabetes prevention coaches has a different background than me, more of background in nursing. And that's what I needed the expertise in. So it's more so that's what I really enjoy at WellSpark, is that we have coaches and individuals from all realms of everywhere, such a huge knowledge base. So I was able to reach out to this other coach, get a little background information, and still help out the individual.
That's great. Kathy, anything you would add?
Yeah, well, I love that. And actually, that's the great thing about WellSpark is we have other coaches and people we can talk to and get resources, for things. But, I think for me, if they're showing up every week to meet with me, whether it's virtual or whatever, where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, just keep digging. It's finding that, through what we call powerful questioning and, getting to that, what is going on. They're clearly showing up for a reason. So there's something that they want to change. So to be patient.
And so it's safe to say that unless they're not showing up, that's
right,
a whole different bag, right?
Yeah.
But so long as somebody's there, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna keep on keeping on. Good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So another question came in, which I think is interesting. I'd love to pose to you. Let's see, Morgan, I'll give this one to you first. Did your employer offer any incentive programs to participate? And if that's a yes, do you think that helps employees say yes to a program like this one?
Well, the answer is yes. My employer offers incentive programs. And yeah, I can speak to my perspective on it. Certainly entering it and having that uncertainty about is this going to be right for me? And is this something I want to engage in? Having that additional cherry on top, so to speak, was certainly, it encouraged me. At this point, and I'm not just saying this, it's been so valuable, I'd probably do it regardless. But I think it had a big impact on getting me invested and interested from an upfront standpoint.
That's great. Thanks, Morgan. Kamal, how about you? Does CT Transit offer any sort of incentive for you, and has it helped?
Yes, they do offer an incentive program for joining programs such as this. That it's a really great company. They offer a lot of different programs. This is the first one I've joined, and it was a great experience. And I agree with Morgan. It's a great cherry on top. Having taken the program, I would do it again without the incentive. And I would say just do it. Do it for yourself.
Yeah. It's like car maintenance. You don't get an incentive. You just find out that your car is not going to die in the middle of the freeway, right? or highway, as they say here in Connecticut. Sorry, not freeway. There's no freeways here in Connecticut. Okay, good questions. I see, let's see, one last question I saw just around the diabetes prevention program. It's available it's a WellSpark program. So somebody asked if it was something that somebody could get coached or learn how to get trained in. And the answer is it's a WellSpark program. So as WellSpark is hiring in the future, we'd be happy to bring on more WellSpark coaches who would then be trained in offering the program to WellSpark clients. But it is a WellSpark. The diabetes prevention program that we're referring to today is a WellSpark program. So thanks for asking that question. One more that came in, and then I'll wrap us up here, is just, will LAS specifically be offering group sessions like this in Connecticut? So I just want to acknowledge that question and say, definitely a question to ask HR. And so I'd encourage that person to ask HR within LAS we'd be happy at WellSpark to provide group classes to LAS employees. So perhaps that's an order you can put in. And I don't know if there's any LAS HR people out there, but I'm sure they're thanking me right now for answering the question in the way that I am. So thank you guys for all the questions that came in. So just being conscientious of our time before we wrap up, I wanted to just go to Kathy, you and Nicole quickly before we get some final thoughts for one last question, which is, just thoughts about why you think the WellSpark model, so that life dimensional approach or focus on biopsychosocial, makes such a big impact. So, why is it that you're doing what you're doing every day why is that so effective? And why do you think that's different than working for or within an environment where biopsychosocial isn't part of the language? Oh, Cass, I should have said, why don't we start with you? Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, certainly, when I think of, pointed solutions, right? Walking challenges, Biggest Loser challenges, those kinds of things are great. They motivate people a little bit. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of weight loss challenges, because, we have the same people that sign up every year. The same person wins every year. They put all the weight back on in 6 months, and that's not solving any, problems. So what in my opinion is missing is the whole person approach and the why behind the what, what's motivating people, what's the lack of motivation to change. And that's where the biopsychosocial model really comes in and allows you to dig deep with someone and get to the root. People don't often start coaching with one thing in mind and they end up somewhere else. So to your question before of someone who can't help, I mean, they think what they want is X, and at the end it ends up being something like Morgan said too. What we covered was things that he never thought we would get into. So it's all connected.
That's great. Nicole?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Kathy said. Just being able to work with employers first, to create this culture for their employees is great. As Kathy said, focusing on the whole person, not just picking and choosing the little parts that we could help. I always like to say, that especially with the diabetes prevention program, it's a year long. So in a year, you have all different seasons that are changing, but along with the seasons, a person is changing, and they go through many different experiences in their lives. And within, with coaching and the diabetes prevention program, the coaches are here to support you through that, all of those different changes that you're going through. So that's where I think the, biopsychosocial comes in, because if we weren't targeting all those different areas within, especially diabetes prevention, that whole year, I wouldn't be able to help anybody to my full ability.
Yeah. So final thoughts. Let's see. Morgan, anything you want to share with the audience as we wrap up? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably leave everyone with, around the same time as I began my work with Kathy, I began going to therapy weekly, in fact, during last year, the challenging year that we all had. And I think part of what I learned from both of those sessions is that half the battle is just making the opportunity to slow down and talk about it. And as much as we might all like to think that we're good at that or capable of that, like my own experience is that that's not the case. And we just kind of tell ourselves we're going to do it. So I spent a lot of my life with that sort of classic mentality of this isn't for me, or that's not something I need, or I don't have time for it. And I would just offer, in full authenticity, having gone through the experience to this point, like I can't imagine not having a wellness coach. I can't imagine not going to therapy. And I think and I'm going to do those things for the rest of my life. At least that's the plan. And it's just another reminder that no matter how smart we think we are, there's always more to learn out there.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Morgan. Thanks for sharing and being so honest. I think the more we can talk about things like this publicly, the more we inspire other people to feel safe enough to have these important conversations. So appreciate that. Kamal, is there anything you want to share? Any final thoughts?
I would like to say that my experience with WellSpark was great. I'm so glad I was pulled into that class. Thank you, Nicole. The class was life-changing. I've learned so many different things. And I don't really know what else to say, but I really enjoyed the program, and I recommend that if there's anyone else out there thinking about it, to give it a try.
Thank you. Nicole?
So one thing I just also wanted to mention is also giving Gamal credit for this program, because he started as an in-person program, and then the pandemic hit, and Gamal had to transition to a more of a digital type of program. And he stuck through it, and he went through it, and he did amazing. So I want to also just be giving Gamal that credit ahead of my final thoughts. So great job. But also, you know, WellSpark is just creates these very unique experiences, as everyone heard on today. You know, it's unlike any other off-the-shelf, you know, well-being program out there. So I encourage, you know, if individuals, if your companies don't have these programs, you know, be a voice. And if you're someone who makes decisions and these programs interest you, you know, that's something I think that your employees would really value, because there's a lot of positivity that can come from them.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that. I love that. Be a voice. Be a voice. Kath, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's just the amount of gratitude that I receive towards myself, but also towards Laz on a regular basis from the people that I work with. It's absolutely amazing. And, you know, and so many calls with, you know, feeling teary-eyed because the people are just so grateful that, you know, we take our time to do this every day. So yeah, I think that it's so important.
A nice way to land with gratitude. So I want to wrap up today and share some of the things that I heard. And I was furiously taking some notes because I wanted to recall some of the key words and phrases that I heard today that I think are worthy of note. So a lot around inspire, encourage, motivate, which is wonderful. Fewer sleep challenges. I think that was you, Morgan. I love that. Empower, group, one-on-one, more than pounds on a scale. You know, no two people are at the same starting point. Covering things we didn't expect, how everything is interconnected, being present, which I love, aware of the factors that set us up for success, and general outlook on losing weight, changing from Gamal's perspective. So, you know, seeing what other people are going through and having a foundation of other participants, having clearer thoughts. Wonderful things, gratitude, as I mentioned earlier, consistent encouragement, hard to lose weight alone, and like taking your car for maintenance, which I have to land with because that's now my favorite way to describe what we do at WellSpark. It's wonderful. So I loved that. So thank you guys for those wonderful nuggets. Be a voice within your organization. Be a voice if you're in an organization where this doesn't exist, and ask for it. Be a voice if you're in an organization where it exists, and raise it and raise your hand and get involved is what I heard a lot of. And if you're supporting an employer or a group of employers, like in the capacity of a broker, and you've heard this and felt even remotely inspired, let's take some action and be a voice to start to disrupt, which is where we started. And that's what WellSpark's doing. And I'm proud to be part of that movement. I'm proud to have left HR and to focus exclusively in this space, because I think this is the next generation of health and well-being for employees everywhere. So appreciate everyone today sharing your stories. I have a few, just one quick announcement. We're going to post a poll right now. So thanks to Jill behind the scenes who reminded me that we need to do that. So thank you, Jill. Just quickly before you drop off, was this a good use of your time? Do you have any interest in engaging with WellSpark as a result of intending either as an employee? And this is anonymous, so don't worry, you're not signing yourself up for anything, or as an employer or as a broker. We just like to get a sense for whether or not this was relevant and interesting enough to inspire some action. So you're not signing up for anything by answering yes if your truth is yes. So appreciate your responses to the poll. When you leave today and we end the meeting, you will get a survey just to give us some perspective on how we can do better with events like this in the future. So I'll pause and end with what Kathy said, in gratitude. So thank you Thank you. Thank you to Kathy, to Nicole, to Gamal, to Morgan, and to Jill behind the scenes for helping us. Thank you guys all so much. And looking forward to seeing you at an event soon. If you have any questions about WellSpark and you're within an organization where it exists, reach out to your HR team. You can reach out to WellSpark directly. You can find me on LinkedIn or on WellSpark's website. You can also find us just online at wellsparkhealth.com or on LinkedIn. So take care, everyone. Be well. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.